Hello students, welcome to Biosastra Talks. I hope all of you are doing well. As we already know that we are going on with the NEET previous paper revision along with some topics like PYQs and topics. We already discussed about now we are discussing the photosynthesis process, in that the light reactions. So in the previous videos I have explained about the light reaction, where it will take place, and about photosynthesis like photosystems and everything. So in this video we are going to know about what is the jet scheme of photosynthesis and what are cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylations and the difference between them, along with some PYQs from each topic. Okay, so let's get into the topic here. First of all, what is a jet scheme of photosynthesis? As we already know that what is normally light reaction means conversion of light energy into the chemical energy with the help of some photosystems. So why the jet scheme of photosynthesis came here means why? Because here we are explaining the flow of electrons, how the electrons will flow from one place to another place. So the manner of electrons, the manner of flow of electrons through the light dependent actions of the reactions of the photosynthesis is explained in this model. That's why it is known as the jet scheme. I'll tell you why it is known as jet scheme. Okay, you can simply see here in the picture itself that the flow of electrons, here you can see the yellow line, right? So this yellow line represents the flow of electrons. So here by this yellow line you can understand that it appears in the zigzag manner, not in a straight line. So it appears in the zigzag manner, that's why it is known as Z. Okay, Z means nothing but the zigzag manner. The flow of electrons in a zigzag manner is called the Z scheme of photosynthesis. Okay, that's why it is represented with simply Z and it is known as Z scheme. Okay, now we'll see what is the what it represents. Normally what is the Z scheme and everything. So here in the Z scheme itself you will have how the what it represents means when the electrons will flow from one place to another place, how they gain energy or lose energy. Simply you can say that it shows how the electrons gain or lose energy as they move from water molecules to photosystem 2, and then to ETC chain, and then to photosystem 1, and then to NADP plus and NADPH. So these are the 5 steps that will taken place in the Z scheme of the photosynthesis. Means in these 5 steps you can see the gain and lose of energy of the electrons by this graph. Okay, as you can observe this graphical structure, you can see that here they have given the energy values like the energy gain or lose. You can simply see that here in the first thing the photolysis of water will take place. So and then those electrons which were released, electrons, protons and oxygen molecules which were released will enter into the photosystem 2, and then with the help of the sunlight, when the photosystem 2 gets excited, those electrons will flow through the electron transport chain and to the photosystem 1. Okay, so obviously in the photosystem 1 also, when the photosystem 1 absorbs the sunlight at specific nanometers like 700 nanometers, it gets excited and then use the electrons to form NADPH molecules here. Okay, so like this the flow of electrons will take in place. So now we'll see in which step the electrons lose the energy and which step the electrons gains the energy. Okay, so here you can see what are the key points and how it will take place. In the first one you can see that the photolysis at the PS2. So PS2 means the water is hydrolyzed and it is broken into electrons, protons and oxygen, and then that electron will enter into the PS2 where it absorbs the sunlight and gets excited, and then the energy level is increased. So here you can see the energy level increase, like gain of energy in the electrons in the first step. Okay, if we move on to the second step, what is that? Electron transport chain means the flow of electrons through some carriers like ferredoxin, cytochromes and quinons, plastoquinone, pool, plastocyanin, etc. So these are all the electron carriers that were present in the electron transport chain. Okay, so in this step normally what happens, the electron pass through that ETC from PS2 to the PS1 photosystem. So here when the electrons have to move fastly through all these electron carriers, obviously they lose some energy, right? Simply when we sit stably, like when we sit properly, you not lose energy. But when we move from one place to another place, obviously we'll lose energy. Like that only, when the electrons move from one electron carrier to the another and from directly from PS2 to PS1 through some electron carriers, obviously it loses energy. So in the second step, obviously the electrons will lose the energy. Whereas when they go to the third step, that is nothing but excitation at the PS1, means when the photosystem 1, when it receives the electrons and along with that when it observes some sunlight at 700 nanometers, obviously the electrons get re-excited. Like when we drink anything, or when we are like for example, when we lose energy, obviously we'll drink anything or we'll eat anything, obviously you'll get energy. Like that only, when these electrons enter into the PS1 molecules, when they are exposed to the sunlight, they get re-excited by the light in the PS1 itself, and then again the electrons will gain the energy here. And whereas in the last step, that is nothing but the formation of NADPH within the PS1, obviously those electrons who are excited and have more energy are finally used to reduce the NADP plus ions to NADPH with the help of the protons that were released here. Okay, like that means for the formation of the nicotinamide phosphate, okay, obviously these electrons will help for the formation of these energy molecules. Okay, so like this the electrons flow from PS2 to PS1 with the gain and lose of energy and everything. At the last they form some energy molecules. Okay, so this all step taken place in a zigzag manner, that's why it is known as the jet scheme of photosynthesis. Okay, so what were the normally NEET points you have to remember for this from this topic, or simply it is called jet scheme because of the energy diagram, not on the electron shape. Okay, and it involves both PS2 and PS1, and obviously you can say that through the jet scheme of photosynthesis you can see formation of ATP and NADPH also. ATP is formed in the PS2, like in the light reaction process. So in the jet scheme, when we go deeply, you can see the formation of ATP also. And another thing you have to remember is it happens in the thylakoid membrane itself. Okay, why? Because the photosystems are present in the thylakoid membrane of the chloroplast. That's why this jet scheme happens in the thylakoid membrane itself. Okay, so this is the topic of jet scheme and how the electrons will flow through the zigzag manner. Okay, so from this topic we'll see some of the PYQs that were that were there in the previous papers. Okay, so what were the questions given here are, first question is from NEET 2020 paper. Here what was the question they have given in that paper is, jet scheme of light reaction takes place in. Okay, this is the simple question. You can simply say, now only we remember the NEET point. So what was the location it happened? It is nothing but thylakoid membrane. So obviously you can select the option B, that is nothing but grana thylakoid membrane. Okay, so this is the answer for this question. And if we move on to the next question here, it was given in the NEET 2017 like that. So what was the question is, jet scheme of electron transport is the movement of electrons. Okay, what were they asking? The electron transport of jet scheme is movement of electrons from where to where. In here they are asking the movement of electrons will take place from where to where. So they have given certain options, like from first of all, first option is like from water to NADP plus through PS2 to PS1. Okay, you can consider this one also. And another thing was from NADP plus to water through PS1 to PS2. And another thing, and another option is CO2 to glucose, and last one is cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, and students, I want to tell you one point here. Whenever you will go on with the options from the question, you have to simply look at the options correctly. First of all, if you know the topic, like if you know the question properly and if you know the topic from where that question came, you can simply neglect some options. Like for example, you know that normally a light reaction taking place from PS2 to PS1, first thing, right? So here in the second option what they have given, PS1 to PS2, but it's not correct. And another thing also, here they are giving like NADP plus to water. Obviously you know that water is hydrolyzed first, then only the electrons released from the water water molecules, then only they'll flow from one place to another place. No, so this option is wrong here. And another one here, they are giving like CO2 to glucose. Obviously in the light reaction of light reaction of photosynthesis, you will not see the production of CO2 or glucose, so this is also wrong. And cyclic photophosphorylation, if you know the cyclic phosphorylation, now I am going to explain, but it simply takes place in the PS1 itself. So the flow of electrons obviously taken place from PS1 PS2 to PS1, so this is also wrong answer. Then what is the best option you have to consider here is nothing but PS2 to PS1, and then you can see that from water to NADP plus. So this option is correct here. Like that, if you neglect the options that were not, if you see the options and you can see like if you know the topic, you can see some of the options are not really reliable to that question. Like that, if you neglect some options, obviously you will get the right answer. Okay, so this is the Z scheme of the photosynthesis here. If we move on to the next thing, that is nothing but, okay, 1 minute, actually that is nothing but cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so cyclic photophosphorylation means we already know that the light reaction takes place in two ways, that is nothing but cyclic and non-cyclic. Obviously by the name itself you can say that cyclic means it will take in place like in the cyclic form, cycle form. Okay, so cyclic photophosphorylation. So here I'll explain you with some diagrams here. So here you can see that the sun, which is emitting some sun rays. Okay, so when the sun rays, you have to see the image properly. Okay, when the sun rays were fallen on the chloroplast, and then you can say you know that the photosystems are present in the chloroplast itself. So when the sun rays are fallen on the PS700 photosystem of the chloroplast, obviously what will happen, they'll get excited. Okay, the electrons which were released by the photolysis of water get excited, and then obviously the energy of molecule is also increased, and then the PS700 will get excited, and those electrons that were released, okay, they'll flow from PS700 to ferredoxin, and then to the plastoquinones, and then to the cytochromes, and then to the plastocyanins, and then what will happen in the last, you know that here normally if we see the light reaction of the photosynthesis, you can say that the flow of electrons taken place from PS2 to PS1, and then the NADP is formed. But here we are discussing that it is nothing but cyclic photophosphorylation, right? So cyclic means here the electron should flow cyclic, like in the form of cycle, means they have to get excited, they have to move through all the electron carriers and then again to the chloroplast. So in the cyclic photophosphorylation, what will happen here is, obviously the electrons which will pass on to the PS700, what they will do here is the major role, they'll convert the ADP plus like adenine diphosphate plus phosphate ions to obviously ATP molecules. So in the cyclic photophosphorylation, you can see the flow of electrons in a cyclic way, and along with the formation of the ATP molecules here. So that's why the name is known as cyclic photophosphorylation. Why? Cyclic means it happens in the form of cycle, and photo means in the presence of sunlight, and phosphorylation means obviously formation of phosphates, means phosphorylation means nothing but addition of phosphate ions, means nothing but gaining energy here. So in the cyclic photophosphorylation, you can simply see the gaining of energy or the formation of ATP molecules along with the flow of electrons through a cycle. Okay, so this is the whole cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, it happens only in the PS1 molecules. You have to observe the thing here, because we are not discussing about the PS2 molecules here, we are only discussing about the PS1. So normally the cyclic photophosphorylation occurs only in the photosystem 1 molecules, and the electrons will flow in a cyclic way for the formation of ATP molecules. Okay, so the primary aim for this cyclophotophosphorylation is nothing but to produce the ATP molecules. Okay, so these electrons are transferred to a series of electron carriers, as I already told you. And then when this all thing was happening, the cyclic photophosphorylation is happening, obviously it creates a proton gradient across the thylakoid membrane, driving the synthesis of ATP molecules here. Okay, so means the flow of electrons when happens like this, flow of electrons happens, then the proton gradient is formed here. It will lead to the formation of ATP molecules. Okay, normally when you have to know when this cyclic photophosphorylation occurs. Normally cyclic photophosphorylation will not occur normally in the light reaction, but when it occurs means when the molecules like the chloroplast molecules or the photosystem or the like PS molecules need energy for their excitement, means they need more energy, then only this cyclic photophosphorylation will occur in the photosynthesis process. Okay, it is important under the conditions where the demand for ATP is higher than NADPH, means they need the ATP molecules as their energy source, then only the cyclic photophosphorylation will occur in the PS1 itself. Okay, but such as in the dark reaction of photosynthesis you can see. Okay, so like this it will happen again and again and again when the energy is needed by the PS1, okay, in the form of ATP. Okay, and next one, if we move on to that, what is the next one you have to discuss? That is nothing but non-cyclic photophosphorylation here. Okay, we no need to explain it too much. Why? Because we already discussed about the light reaction process, and then you can see non-cyclic means no, like the electrons which were carried will not come again to the PS2. So in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation, you can see the chlorophyll molecules that were excited, like PS2 molecules excited, and then this is nothing but the path of electrons, means nothing but it is what is that? It is nothing but the electron transport chain, and then they again enter into PS1 or something, and then at the end you can see the formation of NADPH or NADP plus molecules with the help of light source. Means here the electrons are ended, they are not cycled again to the PS2 or PS1. Okay, so that's why here the electrons which were formed, they'll help in the formation of ATP and NADP molecules. So here they are not cycled again to the photosystems, that's why it is a non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so primary pathway for the conversion of light energy, it is normally light reaction of the photosynthesis comes under this non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Why? Because it involves both PS2 and PS1, and primary purpose, you know that when the light reaction occurs, obviously ATP and NADPH, both of them are formed. So primary purpose is for the formation of both ATP and NADPH, and it is responsible for the photolysis of water and release of the some oxygen atoms into the atmosphere, which we will need for the breath. Okay, and another thing, the electrons which excited in the PS2 are transferred to the PS1 with the help of the electron carriers. Obviously, they will reduce the NADP plus molecules to NADPH. So this is nothing but the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. I am not explaining it too much. Why? Because we already know in the previous video we explained about the light reaction process. So the light reaction of photosynthesis comes under the non-cyclic photophosphorylation itself. So this is the whole thing that happens in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so now we'll know some of the differences of the cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylations, so that so that you can easily understand. Okay, so first of all, what is the future? If we see cyclic and non-cyclic, here it involves both. Only cyclic photophosphorylation, we know that it involves only PS1, but in the non-cyclic both PS2 and PS1 photosystems are involved, whereas the products formed from the cyclic photophosphorylation is nothing but ATP, right? But whereas in the non-cyclic you can see the formation of both ATP and NADPH and the release of oxygen atoms. Okay, Okay, and the flow of electrons, if you see in the cyclic manner, you can say that it is in a cyclic, means the flow of electrons will flow like in a cycle form. Okay, wheel. So but whereas in the non-cyclic it is linear, means it ends at some end, it will not come again, means the electrons will not again enter into the photosystems. Okay, so it is linear. Whereas the O2 released, if we see, O2 is released only in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Why? Because here you can see the photolysis of water, but the photolysis of water does not occur in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation, cyclic photophosphorylation. That's why the O2 is not released in the cyclic phosphorylation. And again you should have one doubt, how the electrons came here. You can simply say that the electrons which were came from the PS2 to PS1, those electrons only will undergo this cyclic photophosphorylations when they get excited with the help of sunlight. Okay, so this happens only, we know that when the cyclic photophosphorylation will happen, obviously it happens only when the photosystems need more energy for the process. Okay, and so if we see some of the PYQs here, what are the PYQs that were given in the previous papers? First one is from NEET 2022. So what was the question here is cyclic photophosphorylation results in the formation of, okay, sorry, why? Because already we have discussed here. You can simply say what is the option? Cyclic photophosphorylation results in the formation of what? ATP only. So what is the option you have to tick here? Only ATP. Okay, and whereas which of the following is produced during non-cyclic photophosphorylation? Okay, so these two are the common questions, but they have given from the two topics. Non-cyclic means obviously you can say that ATP, NADPH and O2. Okay, so these are the previous year questions that were came from this cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylations. Okay, so that's it guys. So today video, and I hope all of you understood this process, how the jet scheme of photosynthesis will take place, and along with the cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylations. As I want to request you that I want to know, like, if anyone, like the people who are watching my video, are you understanding the video, or I want to just if you have time, just comment me in the comment section so that I will know how I have to explain, and what were the changes I have to make in my videos. Okay, thank you guys, thank you so much. We'll meet in the next video.